Welcome to the Principal Podcast, where we talk about how the best professional services firms grow. Whether you're looking to scale your firm or learn from the stories of founders and leaders who've done it, you're in the right place. Join us as we interview the best leaders in professional services. Let's get on with the show.
Welcome to Consulting Leaders Podcast, a place we talk about the business of consulting. Whether you're looking to grow your own practice or learn from the stories of leaders in consulting, you're in the right place. I'm your host, John Degnan. Join me as we talk with the best consultants in their niche. We have one today, Danny Wareham, an organisational psychologist, author of Constellation, and founder of Firgun. He helps leaders design cultures where performance is a natural byproduct of clarity, purpose, and environment. In this episode, we explore a different take on leadership, one where culture, not hierarchy, drives results. Welcome, Danny.
Hello, John.
Tell us more about yourself.
So that's a great introduction.
Thanks.
But my name is Danny Wareham. I'm an IO, an industrial organisational psychologist, you would say, in the States, or a business psychologist in the UK. My specialties are kind of two sides. One is sort of social dynamics and how do people relate to each other. So that plays into things like relationships in work, team working, culture, employee engagement. And then the second side is about personality and individual difference. So what makes you you, with a particular slant on narcissism, psychopathy, and Machiavellism, which are traits we tend to recruit for in our leaders.
Interesting. That's very different. Can you expound on that?
Of course. So I got into this field. I'd had quite a long career in commercial, in the corporate world, and I had a bit of a wobble when I left. I took redundancy and I'd been with one organisation for quite a long time. So I had a bit of a wobble of, am I actually any good? Or am I only good in this one kind of pond that I've been swimming in? So as a result, I went to university and studied and did some academic research into leadership, which became Constellation. But as part of that, I got fascinated because of my natural curiosity and disruptive nature in personality, because we know that it's now partly genetic, and anything that's genetic, anything that's passed on through generations, tends to have benefits. So by that rationale, there must be benefits to having psychopathic traits. There must be benefits to having narcissistic traits. But we tend to think of those as at the top end, you know, the Ted Bundys and the I won't use any politicians' names, but we know the sort of behaviours that we see when we think of narcissism in its traditional sense. But actually, it's a spectrum, like all personality facets. So things like, are you optimistic? When things go wrong, can you pivot and bounce back and have resilience? Those are narcissistic traits. Can you make tough decisions and separate the emotion from the decision, from the rational? Can you compartmentalize? Well, that's a psychopathic trait. And are you able to influence people? Are you able to inspire and lead people? And those are Machiavellian traits. So there are no good or bad personality traits. It really depends on the context. But in entrepreneurship, we tend to see a higher prevalence of narcissistic, psychopathic, and Machiavellian, or what we call dark triad traits.
We mentioned your book.
That doesn't mean everybody's hacking everybody up and burying them under the patio at all. It's not. It's much more subtle than that.
Okay. Well, we mentioned your book, Constellation. Can you tell us more about that?
Sure. Again, as part of my studies quite a while ago now, I looked into leadership, and I've been a leader again in the corporate world for a couple of decades, but I've never really given it any thought about what a leader actually is. And as part of the studies, we went through kind of the history of leadership and the last 200 years of theory, and there are hundreds and hundreds of different models. But the commonalities between all of them are a leader is always a person, a leader sets the direction, so the kind of vision or goal or missions, and a leader is disproportionately influential in terms of the behaviours that are acceptable. So they don't create the culture, but they are more influential than most in creating the culture. So with my disruptive, curious brain, I wondered if a group knew the direction, they knew what we were trying to achieve, and they also understood those sort of implicit rules of how we get things done around here, then does a leader need to be a person at all? Or can culture lead? Or to put it another way, who leads when the leader isn't in the room? which is most of the time. And that became the basis for the first ever academic research into a form of leaderless leadership. And that's been expanded after the research into the book Constellation. It sounds a little bit, maybe a bit John Lennon, a bit, let's all sit around a campfire and sing Kumbaya. But it's not a sort of socialist commune at all. If you think about who's the leader of your family, well, it will depend. If it was directions, it would be my partner, because I've got a horrendous sense of direction. If it's the Wi-Fi going down, it might be one of the kids, because I also have no technical know-how. So we see in the real world that leadership isn't a person, but it's a process. It's a relational process that happens. So can organizations, can businesses, small and large, leverage this incredibly powerful way of empowering your people to contribute towards a shared goal? And that's all Constellation leadership is.
What got you into organizational psychology and consulting in the first place?
So there were a couple of reasons. So as part of that, leaving the corporate world, I had a bit of reflection over what is it that gets me out of bed in the morning. And without going too far into my life story, I never did any sort of sports at school. I was a bit of a spotty chess captain, choir boy type person. And it wasn't until I left high school and went to what we call sixth form, so that's sort of age 16 to 18, where I thought I wanted to be a doctor. So I did a lot of additional sort of biology and chemistry and physics type training. But one of the courses was anatomy and physiology, and part of that was a sport. And I had to choose from a certain selection. So I chose basketball. And it was the first time I ever fitted in. And it wasn't because I could score lots of points, although I was quite good. It was because I liked learning, where do you like the ball? Do you like it in the paint? Do you like it out of three? Do I need to look at you before I pass? Is it a bounce pass or chest pass, etc.? So it was always about how do I set the environment so that you can be successful. Elsewhere in my life, if I host a barbecue, then it's not about my food. It's about, is your drink topped up? Is the music okay? Is the temperature all right? And all of my work as a consultant and all of my history through my corporate life has always been around how do you set the environment for other people. So when I set up my consultancy, which is called Firgun, which is a Hebrew word, which means to take sincere delight in somebody else's accomplishments, and it was the perfect word to use, it just became a natural extension of what gets me out of bed every day, which is how do I help make you better? How do we create inclusive environments where you can be you?
I was writing that down. Sincere delight in other people's accomplishments. That's excellent.
Yeah. Firgun, Firgun. Language is it's a key to your cognition. So it follows that if there are some words that don't translate into other languages directly, then it follows that people that speak those languages must have slightly different cognition. So, for example, we all know the Schadenfreude, which is to take delight in somebody else's misfortune. If you're not sure of the word, picture an old lady being hit with a frisbee, or a kid falling off his skateboard. That chuckly, happy feeling that you get in somebody else's misfortune, that is Schadenfreude. We don't have a word for that in English. The same is true of Firgun. Yet everybody knows that warm, fuzzy, oxytocin feeling that when you see a good deed happen to somebody else. And it's the world would be a better place if we had more Firgun.
What specific problem are you helping your clients solve today? And why does solving that matter to you so much personally?
I'll answer the question in reverse if I can. So there are lots of studies that show the benefits of employee engagement. Purposefully engaged employees are more likely to not take time off work. They're less likely to have accidents. They're more productive. They're more loyal. Their tenure is longer, etc. Those are all true. But there are also studies that show that purposefully engaged people are more likely to cut their neighbour's hedge, to donate their time to charity and help in their communities. And the reverse is also true. Disengagement correlates with family breakdowns, debt, domestic violence. My view is that employers rent their employees from their families. They have a duty of care to return them to their communities in a better condition. Now, one of the ways that we can do this is through culture. The challenge is that when people talk about culture, they think of fun and frivolity and, beanbag furniture and pizza Fridays, and they think about a great place to work. But culture isn't about a great place to work. It's about creating a place where great work is done. What are the behaviors that make your organizational strategy more likely to be achieved? And you can intentionally nurture those. And the result is better business, more sustainability, but most importantly, people return to their families in a better condition. So it's a little bit soapboxy and preachy, but it absolutely matters. You take your work home with you.
Absolutely. Who are your ideal clients?
This is a great question. And when I first started out in business, it was really tough to answer because every business is a people business. And ultimately, if you're looking at individual differences, what makes you you, and we're looking at culture, what makes us us, then that applies to every industry, whether it's a charity, a blue chip, a small business. So what I tend to do is my segments that I now aim for are either very small micro businesses that are often started almost entirely through either passion or trauma. So a lot of small businesses are started because I can do my job better than my boss, or I don't like what I'm doing at the moment for this particular area and I could do it on my own, or I want to change my life and do something different. Either way, those are great fuel sources for starting a business. The challenge is you get a little bit down the road, it might be a few months, it might be a couple of years, and that fuel's been expended. And now because you don't have that kind of, that almost Simon Sinek why, why did I start the business? What's my direction? Then, and you don't have that identity, you end up spending good money after bad on should we do this social media campaign? Should we employ this person, etc. So the first pot of customers and prospects that I look for is how do you help those individuals find their identity and build their framework for things like what you might call organizational values, the behaviors, how we get things done around here, so that kind of cliched North Star helps give some direction to the organization. The second is quite a bigger size, so around the sort of 100 head and transforming. So for example, I have a client who's come out of their first round of private equity investment, and they're a very fast growing IT company, and their culture is let's try things and break things. So a very kind of Google-esque type approach to innovation. The challenge they have is that the next round of investment that they want, those investors want more maturity in a business. They want more governance, more structure. So how do we not throw the baby out with the bathwater and keep the good things that have got us where we are, but put more intentionality around the behaviors, the systems, the processes, etc., so that they can attract
almost two different
their
cultures,
choice
right?
at the next stage.
Almost two different cultures, right?
Completely different. Yeah, it's completely different. What are the behaviors that will help your organizational strategy? And the third is big, horrible beasts. So I work with large blue chip organizations that have this sort of Russian nested doll of culture within culture within culture, combined with almost a Stockholm syndrome of we know our processes and our systems and the way we do things is a bit clunky and inefficient, but they're ours and you're not touching them. There's kind of a protectionism around you don't need to be mad to work here, but it helps kind of philosophy. So, for example, organizations like Lego, FIS, WorldPay, Sky TV, etc., these organizations often have micro subcultures that result in sort of siloed behaviors and tribal activities, which are not necessarily bad, but are they intentional? Do they help you succeed? A very quick example, I had a client who everything they do is about their customer. Their mission's about customer. How do we grow our customer? Because if their business is a success, then our business will be a success. So this is what they say they're about. But then when you look through the weeds, because culture leaves evidence, they don't use the word customer anywhere in their organization. Everyone is a merchant or a vendor or a client or a prospect. If I look at their calendars, how are they spending their meetings? 80% of their meetings are on governance, commission, finances, not customer. And these are not inherently bad, but the bigger the delta between what you say you're about and the lived experience of what it's really like, then the more chance there is going to be inefficiencies and toxicity that creeps into organizations. And my job, in a nutshell, is to reduce that delta between your walk and your talk.
How do you attract the right clients today, and what's worked best for you to build your authority in this space?
Again, another fantastic question. Most of my clients, and this isn't a strategy for everybody, but most of my clients will know my name. So they're either warmly referred. So my strategy is to have as much social proof out in the world as possible. So when you Google my name or you Google my organization, there's academic research, there are lots of podcasts, there are keynote speeches at a variety of large organizations like the Association for Business Psychology or the Institute of Leadership, etc. So it's almost a way of providing some evidence that I'm a credible source. So that's how I tend to work. The challenge with culture, because it can feel a little bit ambiguous and wishy-washy and abstract, that cold prospecting, cold DMs, LinkedIn messages, etc., it's a difficult sell because people think we've got a great culture. Nobody thinks they've got a bad culture. And in order to admit that you need some help, two things need to happen. One, you need to have the self-awareness to know that you need some help. And two, you need the vulnerability to actually ask a stranger to come in and have a look under the hood.
Sure.
Those things don't tend to happen. So I used to go that way and kind of cold prospect, but actually a better way is establish your credibility, your gravitas through, authoring a book, which is for Business Book of the Year, and produce quality articles, quality content, and ultimately use your referral network to help introduce you warmly.
Danny, you're big in thought leadership. What's your view on podcasting as a marketing channel for consultants in your field?
Any question for a psychologist, you tend to get it depends as an answer. It really does depend. There's no one silver bullet to attracting clients and prospects. But I've always said there's silver buckshot. There are lots of things that podcasting allows that other media don't. So, for example, if a podcast is very small, doesn't have a lot of listenership, it still gives you the opportunity to practice your speaking, your oratory, and honing your message so that when you have to pitch in person, it hopefully is a little bit more confident and structured, and you kind of get to the point a little bit quicker. Something that I'm particularly poor at, I would have to say. If the podcast has a large listenership, then of course it's a bit like advertising. And of course, the added benefit is based on the other people that are on the podcast. So if you're having a panel podcast, for example, or the previous guests that are on a podcast, there's almost a halo effect of credibility that you're associated with the same kind of guests as well. So it can be an incredibly powerful tool for raising the credibility and that gravitas of speakers. But even if it doesn't do that, practicing delivering your pitch, practicing delivering your messages is never a bad thing to do.
Interesting. I never heard that slant before. That's interesting. When you're selling culture and leadership work, which can feel intangible, how do you make the value clear and get clients to commit?
Don't sell culture is the short answer.
Okay.
So again, culture is one of those words that people think it's vibes. It's how people feel on a Sunday night before a Monday morning. It is not. Culture is a strategic tool. If you think of it in terms of how do we operate? What are the behaviors we have? If you imagine a workplace, and I use this as an example in the book, if you imagine a workplace that's lively and fun and energetic, and there's puppies in the office and there's pizza Fridays and we dress down on a Thursday and all go to the bar at the end of the day, and there's a big grab a grand machine where our top performers can go in and spend 30 seconds grabbing gift vouchers, is that the sort of place that you'd like to work? Because that's a terrible funeral directors. The behaviors you have in the army, which are about you don't know what's going on elsewhere in the organization, but you know how to do your bit. So it's high specialization, but low opacity and low trust in the rest of the organization. If you put that into Google, you'd stop all innovation. But if you took Google's let's try things and break things and fail fast and put that in the army, then some borders are going to change. So instead of trying to sell culture as this sort of everybody likes each other and it's a nice, banal kind of environment. Instead, we sell it as, what are the behaviors that you're seeing today that are making work harder? What's your decision-making process? Do you have meetings before meetings? Because that's a sign of control and a lack of safety. These are the sort of things that we focus on. And if I were to ask you about your business, what would 6 months down the line, what would it take for you to feel that you'd hired the right person in a role? You would have a list of things that you would want to achieve. We want our new starters to come in, hit the ground running, etc., etc. Organisational psychologists bring science to HR. We can plan out, how do you attract that person? How do you create interview processes or selection processes rather that predict the behaviours that you're going to get when this person is under stress? So that's what we sell. What are the behaviours rather than the culture?
Where do you find yourself most stuck right now as a consultant, if at all?
Yeah, it's that same area. The perception that culture is fun. It can be fun, but there are lots of businesses that are fun that go out of business. So helping business owners and leaders within organizations and decision makers within larger organizations to appreciate that just because you have somebody in to look at your culture doesn't mean that you've got some sort of bin fire. It doesn't mean your employees are fighting on the car park. All we're doing is we're servicing your car. That's all we're doing. We're coming in and saying, what would make this work just a little bit better? And the thing about culture is that the cliche is, a fish doesn't know it lives in water. You're inside the culture, and this is just how we get things done. But a set of outside eyes stood on the bank looking in, we can see the things that are making life harder, that are making life easier. It's one of the reasons I always recommend you speak with your new starters, because they always bring in fresh eyes and fresh ideas. And you'd be surprised what even somebody that's not necessarily trained in IO psychology is able to bring to the table in terms of, have you ever thought of X, Y, and Z? That would make life a little bit easier here.
Once you start working with a client, how do you ensure they keep coming back and you build long-term relationships? So
this, controversially, I'm going to say that I don't want them back. The reason is that if it becomes a long-term relationship around the same thing, then I haven't done my job. If you think of me as being a medical doctor and you come to me with a broken leg, my job is to help you mend that leg and take care of it for the rest of your life. If I keep your leg broken just so I keep getting a paycheck, that would be a terrible doctor. So the way that I tend to approach it, every culture, every client is slightly different. But the way that I approach it is, how do you get from A to B? So you help me understand where it is you want to go. I help you understand what's helping and hindering today and where to invest. So is it leadership development, or is it ED&I strategy, or well-being, or whatever it might be? I can then act as a sounding board or a mentor to kind of handhold you through that process. And the relationship is there so that if you then decide, because culture is always evolving, if you decide that you need those outside eyes to come in and just kind of temp check and make sure you're still en route, then I can do that. If you want me to come in and actually do leadership development or help teams understand where they go when they're overextended and stressed, then I can do that. But ultimately, my job is to help organizations get some sustainability and some direction themselves, hold their hand through the process, and then for me to move on and do that somewhere else.
Interesting.
Because as I said earlier, it matters. So if I'm spending all my time with one client, there are other workplaces who are sending their employees home. Are they sending them home in the right way?
That's great.
So
Most consultants are looking for those residuals.
Yeah, there are plenty of places where intentional behaviours would make work a better place. We don't want to focus just on, I could have stayed with, I said earlier, Lego's one of my clients. I could have quite easily just kept kind of suckling at the teat there. But the world, and this sounds very melodramatic, but the world would be worse off because of it. Because there are so many other workplaces that do great things that could do even better if they just had some intentionality around it.
Interesting. Okay. Looking ahead, where do you see the biggest opportunity for your work around culture and leadership over the next few years?
There are so many areas because every business is a people business. One of the areas that I'm seeing the most at the moment, and I'll split it into two sides. So we live in a world where technology, automation, and AI it's here. It's taking over. However, people are we can be magpies at times. We can focus on the shiny, the new kid on the block, which is AI. Everybody seems to want AI something in their business. AI is the answer. The problem is nobody knows what the question was. So again, a lot of AI adoption that is not happening or not being successful. And these automations and AI platforms are ultimately implemented by people. So what we're tending to see, and where my work is moving a lot more towards, is unintentional threat responses around technology adoption. So as a quick example, I have a contact center client who has introduced a fantastic bit of kit. It predicts what a customer is calling about based on their previous interactions, their tone of voice, etc. And when the call is presented to the advisor, there is a pop-up on the screen that says, we think Mr. Williams is calling about and changing his address. Here is the process to change the address. So it's already got the knowledge management article ready for when the advisor takes the call. The advisors aren't using it. And what has happened, which is typical of what leaders tend to do, is they've tried to compel the advisors. So they've said, oh, it's going to improve the customer experience, or it will shorten call handling times, or we've spent a lot of money on this, or so they're trying to compel people to use it. The thing is, part of individuals' identity is their status within a group, within a social group. And part of our status is about our competency and how we fit in. And you are presenting something that is effectively telling me how to do my job. It is threatening my status within the tribe. Not in a rational AI is going to take my job way, just in an unintentional subliminal threat response. So no amount of compulsion will change your mind. It's a bit like if you know you've got a few pounds on you and somebody says you need to go to the gym, John, you know you've got to go to the gym, but you're not going to go because they told you to, because you have a threat response you don't even realize. However, if you decide to go to the gym, and there will be reasons behind that, it might be I want to grow old with the kids or play football with them, etc. So with the AI adoption and tech adoption, organizations are slowly starting to realize that this is a systemic cultural issue, not a technology and change management issue. People are not threatened initially by AI potentially taking their role. It is a subconscious threat to, you are challenging my position within the tribe. So I'm seeing a lot more conversations around how do we get people to use these technologies that are going to make their lives easier and going to augment the human response. So that's the first side. I've spent a lot of time talking about that now. So the other side is very short, which is I think there is going to be more focus on human interaction becoming a premium. So as AI and tech takes away the more transactional, more simplistic, the more emotionally laborious, complex and nuanced conversations and interactions are going to have to be done by people.
Interesting.
And we're already seeing sort of in the credit card world, you can, if you have enough money in your bank, you get a personal concierge. So normal people have to go through the IVR and press 1 and press 2 and so on. But if you've got enough money, you end up with somebody who looks after your black card. My prediction is that things like tech and AI are going to go the same, that human interaction becomes almost a premium, but because there are more complex, more nuanced, more emotionally laborious roles with a higher impact on the well-being of the person dealing with that, there's going to be more focus and investment in the soft, squishy bits in the business.
Emotionally laborious. I like that. If people want to go find out more about you and see what you do, where should they go, Danny?
There's a few places. The first is LinkedIn. I'm not the only Danny Wareham, but it's pretty obvious that it's me. The second is dannywareham.com or firgun.co.uk. And of course, the book is available in Barnes & Noble, Watson's, Foyles, all over the world. And of course on Amazon, because everything's available on Amazon. And you can find me there as well.
We'll put all the links in the description. Thank you so much for coming on Consulting Leaders, Danny. You're a great consultant. We appreciate your perspectives.
Thank you, John. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Principal Podcast. We hope you learned valuable strategies to grow your firm and take your business to the next level. Make sure to subscribe and leave us a review wherever you're listening to this show so you never miss an episode. To apply and be a guest on the show, click the link in the description. See you next time.